Welcome into Turnkey on Queen City News Plus, your go-to show for everything real estate. We talk about the latest market trends, do's and don'ts of the industry, and provide expert advice on navigating this dynamic landscape that we call home. It seems like the housing market changes on a daily basis, right? It's so difficult to keep up with all the new trends and what's going on with the market. And today, our guest is Kurt Odom. He is the owner of KO Construction. And Kurt, you kind of have your finger on the pulse of what's happening from the builder's mindset. Thank you so much for coming on Turnkey today. I'm really excited to see kind of what your thoughts are on where the market is heading from your perspective. But first, would love to hear a little bit more about you, how you got into the industry, and how you got to own your own business, and
sure.
you're quite successful at it.
Yeah, I really appreciate you having me, Morgan. Kind of where I grew up was in Robbinsville, North Carolina, which is out in the mountains of western North Carolina.
I couldn't tell by the accent.
No, you don't think so? Yeah. It's a dead giveaway, right?
Yeah, I love it.
So my dad was a general contractor, actually. Didn't teach me a thing about building, though, but taught me how to use a shovel, to say the least. So worked hard all my childhood out with him. He was a very stickler on working hard. So hated his guts for it. Couldn't stand building. Decided I would never do something that he did.
So naturally.
Oh yeah, exactly. He ran me off from the jump.
Mm-hmm.
Went to college, learned that if you worked hard when other people didn't, you kind of succeeded over them. So got to college, worked my tail off because that's all I knew how to do was work hard. Was going to be a doctor, actually. Was studying to be an orthopedic surgeon. Yeah. So went through the medical route, was a kinesiology major, then applied for medical school, took the MCAT. I took it cold the first time, made it 18. I went to Campbell University. I had to have a 21 to get an interview with the medical school there. I was like, if I study for this, I'll blow this out of the water. Because that was kind of my mantra.
Right.
You know, hard tests, I would study 20 plus hours for them. And then that's how I made an A. So I just worked at it hard. Studied 200 hours for the MCAT over Christmas break, took it again, made an 18. I was like, well, shucks, God must not want me to be a doctor. Yeah, exactly. And so my brother-in-law, let me take a step back. I was going to say, okay, maybe I'll be a PA. It's a little easier to get into. Still want to do kind of medical route. Started getting hours in physical therapy because you have to have hours, clinical hours for PA school. Hated it. Hated the clinical setting, hated being inside, hated dealing with people every day like that. I was like, this isn't for me. So my brother-in-law at the time was working for Pulte Homes here in Charlotte. And my wife is from Monroe in Union County. I was like, well, if you want to move back home, we want to start having kids, then, I know construction. I've done it, I'll figure it out. So he was able to help me get a customer service job with Pulte Homes doing warranty for them. And off the jump, it was awesome.
Yeah.
The customer service part, not so much.
Maybe you learn a lot.
Oh, yeah. Learn. Like, it was like drinking from a faucet. Because, the puzzle aspect of home building or construction in general, the problem solving was right up my alley. Every day is a puzzle how to figure out how to fix something.
I don't think people realize that either is how much problem solving there is while you're constructing something.
Absolutely.
You can plan it out, but you hit things on the way.
Oh gosh.
Sometimes literally, and you got to figure it out.
People really think that there's a set of plans and blueprints, and you go to a T off those, and it just works out. But it's not. It's you're trying to put a square peg in a round hole a lot of times with blueprints because if someone's making that in a conceptual view with future thinking ahead of how it's supposed to be, but they can't see all the little nuances and how everything puts together, from a computer or from a piece of paper. It doesn't work like that.
Right.
So you take that as a guide and run with that guide, and then that leads your way from, this problem to this problem and how to fix that and how to resolve it.
So from Pulte, you go straight to KO or?
No, so from Pulte, from the customer service side, I did that for a couple of years, then went into the field manager side with them, where you're actually the manager over the build of the home. And that was a lot more my forte. I was able to structure kind of how I wanted it done from the jump, and I didn't have to deal with other people's problems on the back end. Was able to problem solve as it was going, kind of lead my own neighborhood. I told the managers, this is mine. Don't come in here. This is what I'm going to do, and it'll be fine. If I need you, I'll call you. Yeah, exactly. Kind of deal. So really excelled at Pulte. I was customer service manager of the year the first couple years there, field manager of the year the next time there. And I let them know kind of the whole way, like, hey, you're teaching me how to do this so I can go do it out on my own.
Mm-hmm.
So they were able to help me pay to get my general contractor's license.
Wow.
From there, it's a real
More
funny
studying
story.
for you.
Yeah, I had twins, twin girls in 2018.
Mm-hmm.
So got to that point, pretty much was at Pulte to help insurance pay for the girls being born.
Mm-hmm.
When they were born on paternity leave,
Mm-hmm.
I was like, hey, I'm putting in my 2 weeks notice when I come back. So
Mm-hmm.
as soon as I came back from paternity leave, put in my 2 weeks notice, worked for them for the next 2 weeks, and went on my own from there.
Okay. Well, that's quite the nod to Pulte Homes then, teaching you everything that you need to know to start your own business. I mentioned in the intro of the show that this industry is changing so much so quickly. Would love to hear from you how you think it's changed in recent years, and what are some of the approaches that you have to going from finding a lot, finding a
Yep.
piece of property, and then the result of building a home and handing the keys over to someone else.
So in recent years, home building has actually changed for the good or the
Mhm.
buyer side,
Okay.
for the people, which is probably a good thing because back from 2020 to 2022, maybe some into 2023,
Mm-hmm.
the demand was so high that you could pretty much put anything out there
Mm-hmm.
and it was selling. So
Right.
people were putting, dog houses out there
Yeah.
and people were wanting to live in them for interest rates of 2 to 3%.
For $60,000 more than what you even wanted.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so it was junk. I mean,
Mhm.
people were doing stupid stuff and just throwing them up as fast as they can,
Mhm.
which obviously comes with less thought, less oversee, less of everything, which hurts the buyer in the back end.
Mhm.
Now, when things have slowed down and there's more inventory in the market compared to buyers, you have to put a lot more thought. You have to put a lot more idea, concept, design into a home or to something that you're trying to sell, which helps in the back end.
Mhm.
Come to mention that it's a little cheaper right now to buy back than it was too, because you're not having the wars, the bidding wars as
Right.
well too. So
Well, and we see interest rates are starting to improve. There's now a 5 as the starter
yes,
dumper,
yeah,
which a lot of times any of the buyers who have been on the sideline, that's usually when they jump in, is they're waiting for that magic number
that's right.
of getting their monthly payment down. I want to read to you some of the scripts that we have read on the news in the past few months. I won't read the whole script, but here are some of the highlights or lowlights, depending on how you look at it. Builders are downsizing. Home builder confidence is declining. They're paying more for materials and land while offering price cuts to the buyers, an average of 6%. So that's 24 grand on a $400,000 home. What do you think of those things that I mentioned? And what do you need as a home builder for some of that to improve?
Interest rates is the first thing.
Mm-hmm.
When the people see an interest rate that they think they can afford, then they're going to be out in the market looking for that. When you've got a 2 to 3% interest rate, it's hard to give that up.
Right.
And so when interest rates come down, obviously demand goes up. So that's first and foremost to
Mm-hmm.
be able to help those prices and things of that nature. But also when a community or a city is doing so well, there's going to be people from out of town flood the market. So
Right.
you're going to have your national,
Roughly 1,000 people. What, moving to Charlotte,
yeah,
May, something like
correct.
that?
And so that's what's kept Charlotte in general as a top 10 city in America to move to,
Mm-hmm.
and in the process stability, because there's some cities out there that's not the case.
Mm-hmm.
They're plummeting right now,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not a good situation. They're going into pre-foreclosure. Uh, there's too much inventory on the market.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a good situation. But in Charlotte, we don't have that problem right now, which thank the Lord for that, because that's when things get really, really dicey. But
Materials. What do you think about the materials costing so much?
so materials have went up since COVID drastically.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if it's necessarily because it had to. I think it's because people saw bad news and took advantage of it almost.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not necessarily as hurting the builder as it is the buyer.
Right.
And that's what's scary is home prices are going up because materials are going up, labor is going up. And so the end result is the home goes up.
Mm-hmm.
So somebody has to get squeezed.
Mm-hmm.
Either the builder gets squeezed to a lower, you know,
Margin,
ROI, yeah,
right?
so
Yeah.
to say. And as what you're seeing, they're giving money at the table for people to buy that home, and they're taking less margin, they're taking less ROI, or the home buyer gets squeezed and they have to pay more for it,
Mm-hmm.
as well as a more of an interest rate.
Mm-hmm.
So you see first-time home buyer sectors really hurting right now
Mm-hmm.
because the affordability of a home and the cost that it is to build it aren't matching up right now. So builders are asking more for those first-time home buyer homes, and buyers are not giving that because they
Right.
can't afford it.
I can't afford it.
Yeah.
Something else that I'm seeing as a trend. We actually had someone on Turnkey a number of weeks ago talking about how the size of homes, the square footage, is decreasing because builders are trying to find a way to still offer that first time home buyer a reasonable entry
Yeah.
price. Is that what you're
Oh
seeing
yeah.
too? You're nodding your
Yeah,
head. Yeah.
absolutely. So you kind of go two ways at this. A lot of the national home builders, they're struggling right now because they have a gap of where it is so expensive and so much red tape to
Mm-hmm.
find land and to be able to develop that land with all the permitting, all the EPA standards, stormwater. It
Mm-hmm.
takes such a long time to get through that. And when we went into COVID and then we went into such a euphoria of buying, the land acquisition just wasn't there. And Charlotte's growing so quick that it's so hard and so expensive to find land that you
Mm-hmm.
see a lot of dissipation now because of that from the national home builders. So they're struggling right now on being able to put out a product that's, you know, affordable and
Mm-hmm.
and they can find land to do it on.
Mm-hmm.
And so you see them trying to find parcels that they can squeeze in either townhomes or smaller homes in these areas to be able to give something that people are willing to afford or
Mm-hmm.
buy. On the other end of the spectrum, the luxury market in Charlotte is doing very well right now.
Mm-hmm.
The larger homes, the infield lots in, South Charlotte, the higher end
Mm-hmm.
places here, they're they're going great.
Yeah, some of the new builds that I've seen, in areas where you wouldn't think. I mean, there are some new build homes that are 2 million plus for
Yeah.
again for areas where it's not like it's traditionally higher priced
Yeah.
neighborhoods. Um, it's interesting to see the difference between that and then what kind of those entry level homes are dealing with. When you look at going back to taking a piece of property and then eventually building on that lot, how do you approach that as a home builder? I know you said there's a lot of red tape with that, but do you have like an entry level price in mind of I have to buy, a 1 acre
Oh yeah.
piece of property for X amount?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So it's all, zip code based,
Mm-hmm.
so to say. So on the west side of Charlotte is definitely going to be a different price than on the south side
Right.
compared to the north side compared to the east side. So it's all neighborhood based. So within this zip code or neighborhood, this is the price I need to be at for a purchase of a lot there.
Mm-hmm.
If you go outside of that, because land is so scarce and there's so much competition for it, people are inflating that price, and that's when you get in trouble, which I
Mm-hmm.
I know firsthand. When you overpay for something, and then the market drops, 6 to 8%, that squeezes your margin drastically there. So
I've seen that in some neighborhoods, and actually, there's a neighborhood that you're in. That one of your I was driving through and saw one of the homes that you're building is a lot of newer townhomes getting built, and you can see that the neighborhood is starting to transition. But then you see these uninhabitable homes that have just kind of been sitting there,
mhm.
and clearly there's a market for the builders who are coming through and building properties, but these other homes are just kind of sitting on the market. And I thought, well, if the builders aren't snapping them up, that they must be overpriced.
Yeah, it's either overpriced or, the owner of the property is just not willing to sell, or it's
Mhm.
going through a transition of, someone had it and passed away and now it's in the heir's hands, and then there's
Mhm.
a period of probation,
Mhm.
and there's just a long lengthy gap of trying to get heirs to come to a decision of able to
Mhm.
sell it or not. So the dilapidation of homes is there. The gentrification of homes
Mhm.
in Charlotte is definitely there.
Mhm.
But there has to be a sense of, okay, this is realistically what this home is worth to a builder, and it can't be overpriced at this time. Back
Because
in
essentially you're buying the land. If there's a home on it, you're buying the
yeah,
land. I
you're
mean,
buying the
because you're
land.
gonna tear it down anyway.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So builders make their money from land purchase. They don't make their money from the build and the sale. It's all about what you can buy in the beginning. That's what starts, the ROI on the property.
Mhm.
If you overpay for land or you are in a skinny situation off the jump,
Mhm.
then it's not going to end well for you. And that's why a lot of people, and I've done it myself, when everything was going so well from 20 to 23, people were overpaying for land, hoping that the market was still rising.
Right.
But when it
Well, by the time, I mean,
yeah,
it takes 6 months to a year for,
exactly.
yeah, yeah.
And so on a townhome project that we did, talking about land and red tape and getting to it, it's a 2-year process from the time you buy that land, going through uh, permits, going
Mhm.
through stormwater plans, getting building permits from there. It's almost 2 years before you're able to sell those homes. During that 2-year time frame, a lot of things
Mhm.
change.
Yeah.
And so people were advantageous to try to buy land at a certain price, but now it's a lot different. As you're saying, you're giving concessions, 6 to 10% off of the price, which squeezes you hard.
Right.
And so that's where people are finding out the hard way, myself included, that when things change, it affects everybody in general. So the foresight and the knowledge of kind of how the market is running and going makes a huge difference in buying now
Mhm.
or what you can pay for.
Where are we in this, like, this moment right
Yeah.
now? How would you describe the
It's tough to tell
yeah.
because, again, the euphoria in Charlotte is good.
Mhm.
And so that helps builders here in this area and even people moving here, because you got to think, if builders are doing well and the market is doing well, then actually the buyers are doing well. Because the worst thing that can
Supply
happen,
is a huge,
yeah,
yeah.
the worst thing that can happen is if you buy a home, say for $400,000, and then the market goes down,
Mhm.
you're underwater.
Mhm.
You can't get out of
You
that
can't
home.
move, yeah.
Yeah, because if you sell, you've got to bring money to the table to actually sell your home,
Right.
which is really bad news. That's
Right.
when foreclosures start going up.
Mhm.
And that's why you see some of this happening in other cities across the country.
Mhm.
And so when you see that and you see the numbers of pre-foreclosures going up, that's what makes you step back and think, uh-oh, this isn't good. Because either appraisals are too high, the banks are lending too much,
Mhm.
or the economy is going down.
Mhm.
One of those three things is happening.
Right.
And if that happens within your city, and then you've got a problem, the builder, you can get out of it, because if someone buys it and it works out for you, then great. But that doesn't mean it's not going to catch up with you.
Right.
Because the next one isn't going to be like that. The next one's going to sit, because if a downturn like 2008 happens, it's not good for
Everything's
anybody.
sitting. Right.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. So I don't know exactly where we're at in that cycle.
Mhm.
But I do know that Charlotte is doing well, and so that's what we're hoping and keeping and riding on. That we still have people moving here. It's still one of the voted the best places to move,
Mhm.
one of the best places to run a business or work for a
Right. A lot
corporation
of
here.
businesses
Yeah.
moving their headquarters
Yeah.
here.
So as long as we still have those headlines, then we're still going to have people moving here, and we're still going to have home sales.
For people moving here who are thinking, okay, what does the housing look like? What is the, what kind of a house am I buying? Would love to hear from you. What are some of the design trends? And I know before we came on the show, you kind of gave like a little shout out to your wife because you
Mhm.
said she does a lot of this kind of the designing element.
Yeah. Shout out to Emily.
But Emily, you design beautiful homes, Emily. So Could you kind of walk through what are some of the trends that you're seeing with homes in our area, and what are buyers looking for?
Yeah, so kind of how we focus on it is what are the masses looking for right now?
Hmm.
So obviously a white home is going to be it's going to be timeless. It's never going to go out of style. The darker aspects, the kind of more moody modern aspects is really in right now. I don't know how long they're going to stay though. I see a lot more of the trends going back to the transitional type and the more organic, the more uh wood tones,
Hmm.
earthy type feel, so to say. We've done the black and we've done the modern type look for a few years now.
Hmm.
And so I think the cycle is more to the naturals, so to say, the earthy type feels that I'm seeing a lot of right now.
Hmm. And do you stage every single one of your homes when you?
We do if it
Okay.
hits the market correct.
Okay.
So if it's bought before it hits the market, then no, obviously we don't. But if it hits the market, yes.
How many percentage wise would you say end up hitting the market?
We try to focus probably about 85 to 90% of ours hit the market.
Hmm.
We like the aspect that people see it in its finished
Hmm.
position with it staged, and you get better pictures that way, and things
Hmm.
of that nature for to be able to advertise for yourself.
Hmm.
Um, that doesn't mean that it's always the best for us. If we can find a buyer in the beginning and take,
Bird in the
one,
hand.
exactly,
Yeah.
one in the hand, two in the bush.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll take one in the hand all day.
Right.
Because the way things are going, the way things could go, you never know.
Hmm.
And so,
So, looking into your crystal ball, I
mm,
guess, and you can answer this in any way that you interpret it, I guess, but how would you predict the market is headed, whether that's for builders or buyers? Uh, what do you see as the future of new home construction, either in North Carolina or the U.S.?
I see it. I'm hoping and predicting that it's going to be steady. I don't see it one way or the other drastically happening.
Mhm.
I don't think there, unless, some catastrophic news happens or something of
Right.
that nature that you can't predict. I think it's going to be steady. I think the Fed is going to lower rates in a manner where they don't see
Hmm.
a rush or rush in or rush out either
Right.
way. So I think as long as we're in rates of the fives, people are going to be willing to move. People are
Hmm.
going to willing to sell and buy. They can afford that interest rate because historically that's typically where we're at. Between 5 and 7
Right.
historically is a good rate. So I
Mhm.
think if we're in the lower end of that spectrum, people are going to be willing to spend money, take money.
Leave their
Yeah,
3.5
exactly.
interest rate
Yeah.
because not
Yeah.
as big of a monthly, kick in the pants if
Correct.
you're, yeah.
So what I don't want to see happen though is there be so much rush to Charlotte because it is a good
Mhm.
economy. It is a good place to build or buy or live, that the inventory skyrockets so much that it overtakes people moving here.
Mhm.
Or if that number of people moving here slows down, then you have a problem. And that
Still
is a
need the
problem for
demand,
anybody.
right?
Same thing has happened in Austin, Texas. Austin, Texas was a hot market.
With apartments in Austin, Texas.
Exactly. And so that's what scares me is the hedge funds have so much money that they can build, apartments
Mhm.
like they're drinking water.
Mhm.
And so when you do that, you put so much strain on your market because you have thousands of homes or thousands of places to live in a small area. And so the scale of that, unless you have, can match that with the people moving here or people needing a place to live, it, it will eventually take over.
Mhm.
Then you'll have so much inventory that you don't have the people to buy. And that's what's
Right.
happening in Austin, Texas right now, that everyone rushed there to build apartments,
Mhm.
to build, multifamily homes, and now they can't give them away
Mhm.
because there's so much inventory there that it's caught up with people moving there, and it's going the opposite way.
Well, we did a story about that on Queen City News when it was kind of happening because you had COVID, which is, everyone's rushing out to buy
Yeah.
homes, and there was a supply issue. And we kind of took what was happening in Austin with all of the apartment complexes and then rent decreasing, right? And the question was, will that happen in Charlotte? Because Charlotte was just slightly behind Austin in the construction of all those multifamily complexes. And, I think rent has been steady, closer to uptown Charlotte. But again, what renters want to see is they want to see it going down.
Yeah.
But if it does, that means that there's kind of a surplus.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
And it definitely is. Nationwide rent is going down, which is good for renters. For landlords, not so much. But again, it all goes back to, what are you purchasing these, investments for, or what are you giving the people? So if you're purchasing at the right price as an investor, then you can make money on this. But if you're going out there just to have something, it's going to be a tough road for you. So I would tell people to caution on what they're purchasing right now, and don't just get something just to get it, just to have a rental home, or just to have, a home that you're purchasing.
Yeah.
Be smart about what you're doing, and try to see 5 years down the road. It's tough for sure, but
Because it's exciting.
Yeah.
You want the home, but you also want the
Absolutely.
right home.
Yeah, exactly.
Kurt, thank you so much for coming on Turnkey. You went by too quickly. We'll have to, I guess, have you back on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, tough sell, I
good.
think, on that one. And to everyone else out there, thank you so much for watching this episode of Turnkey on Queen City News Plus. We'll see you next time.
Queen City News Plus. Just search Queen City News on your smart TV's app store.